Hello, my name is Tanisha Reed, and today this presentation will be on adversarial criminal law system. The class is Criminal Justice 305, Intro to Criminal Justice Ethics. The instructor is John Liebarger. This assignment is due September 8th, 2015, and again, my name is Tanisha Reed. The legal system for the United States is known as an adversary system, and in this system, the parties to a controversy develop and present their arguments, gather and submit evidence, call and question witnesses, and within the confines of certain rules, control the process. The fact finder, usually a judge or jury, remains neutral and passive throughout the proceeding. The adversary system. The question is, who wins, who loses? Injustice served by a process that is more concerned with resolving controversies than with finding the ultimate truth? Well, I think the justice system is a process where so many people are involved and have an influence on whether who wins or who loses. It is possible for people with limited resources to enjoy the same access to legal services as do wealthy people. But this is a question that you have to look at, and it's very hard to question or to ask because one has to know and understand the law. If one does not understand the law, then a lawyer is needed, but the poor may not have those privileges, and they will not have the funds to purchase a lawyer, unlike someone that is wealthy. The next question is, does a system that puts a premium on winning encourage manipulation and deception? The system revolves around what we can or cannot prove in court, which means allowing someone to fight for us. You have nothing to lose if you have someone to fight for you. The actions may not be as strong as far as the charges that you may receive, but if you will have a lawyer that's willing to represent you or fight for you so that you are not manipulated by the court system. The criminal justice system consists of law enforcement, corrections, and courts. The criminal justice system consists of those three things because there's the investigating of crime, which is done by the police, prosecuting crime, which is done by attorneys, and law and order is done within the courtroom, which is where sentencing is handed down. There are three parts to the levels of the justice system. And the first is the local level justice system. And the local level has jurisdiction over minor state offenses and violations. The violations can consist of things like zoning, domestic relations, and they have jurisdiction over juvenile cases and things like disturbing the peace cause. The local level justice system provides safety within communities, but everything is based on lower level violations that could include things like petty theft or small things like school fights. The state level justice system has jurisdiction over the health of citizens, safety, and morals. Things like obtaining a marriage license or executing a will is handed down in state courts. The state and local level justice system, they kind of work hand in hand. The state criminal justice system hands down crimes committed within their state boundaries, which include civil and criminal cases. But there are decisions that can be reviewed by courts of appeals, and a case may be reviewed by the state as a last resort, often called the Supreme Court of the state. The only cases state courts are not allowed to hear are lawsuits against the United States, and those involving specific federal laws like criminal, antitrust, bankruptcy, patent, copyright, and some maritime cases. This information has come from litigation.findlaw.com. The next level is the federal. The federal cases will include things like criminal cases that impose jail sentences, fines, or other forms of punishment of people who are found guilty. And federal court cases are things that can be anywhere from immigration, bankruptcy, copyright again, patent, and federal criminal cases. The federal court system has the Supreme Court at its apex, and its decisions are final and cannot be appealed. The U.S. federal court system is structured into lower trial courts, which is the U.S. district courts, appellate courts that review lower court decisions, which is the U.S. courts of appeals, and a high court that reviews the U.S. district court decisions as well as state Supreme Court rulings, which is in the U.S. Supreme Court as well. There are only a few federal laws about robbery, such as the law that makes it a federal crime to rob a bank whose deposits are insured by a federal agency. Examples of other federal crimes are bringing illegal drugs into the country or across state lines, and use of U.S. mails to swindle consumers. Crimes committed on federal property, such as national parks or military reservations, are also prosecuted in federal court. This information as well comes from litigation.findlaw.com. Inside the courtroom, there is the judge, which everyone faces. Everyone plays a special role inside the courtroom, and most cases are rescheduled if a valuable party does not show up, whether it's a witness, a police officer, a bailiff, a lawyer, even if it is a paid or appointed lawyer, the plaintiff, or even the defendant. The case cannot be heard. The judge is head over all criminal and civil cases. Everyone in the courtroom will sit facing towards the judge. In federal civil cases, there are from 6 to 12 jurors. Unlike criminal cases, civil cases do not have alternate jurors. All of the jurors are required to participate in reaching the verdict unless the court excuses a juror from service during the trial or deliberation. Witnesses are a plus in the courtroom because they can help establish what is true versus what is false. The police is needed to provide order in the courtroom that can bring in evidence or even transport a defendant and or a bailiff. In most cases, we go to court in order to peacefully resolve things. And in most cases, some people feel that the law isn't on our side. In most cases, people view the court system as being broken. And the court system is not a disadvantage to most people if things are done properly and in order. For me, court has been on my side because in most cases, I seek help when there are matters that are out of my control. You bring the courts involved. Most people try to take matters in their own hands, and things do not work very well for them. There are several trends, and the trends really revolve around who needs help of the court, because most people are arrested, and most people that are arrested are African Americans, and they comprise of 13% of the U.S. population. And the federal prisoners or anyone in jail per se needs the court because their life is in their hand. I say their life is in their hand because once in court, you either prove your case or you cannot prove your case. And that determines either a guilty verdict, an innocent verdict, long jail sentences, and more. But with a lawyer, sometimes the judge is a little bit more lenient, even though you can represent yourself. But if you do not know the law, then that itself isn't a very good idea. Research continues to see that race is always a factor in a lot of cases, because when it comes to blacks versus whites, blacks always feel that whites have an upper hand on everything, and it's hard to really prove your innocence when you feel the law isn't on your side to begin with. And as African Americans, it's just hard to not be looked upon as a criminal in the eyes of the law. Because if it comes down to an African American versus a white American calling for assistance, there always seems to be more aggression from the African American standpoint. But they say that the system is not broken or in need of repair. But all depend on who is saying what. And when the U.S. Constitution, there should be some changes made, because there has always been things that are called white supremacy or black inferiority. But who stands more to gain versus who stands more to lose? As African Americans, blacks are placed in jail, and any questions that need to be answered, it comes at a later time, which is within the courtroom. Black people feel that they cannot fight for themselves because the court system isn't on their side. Even with the legal system in the United States, it's just hard to fight your truth. And there are several cases where the verdict, you can either be found guilty or you can actually win the case and charges are dropped. But everything revolves around having a good lawyer, having evidence. Because when you don't have those things, it's hard to find the support you need for things to be resolved in a legal way. Most people do not go to courts because they always feel that most decisions will not be favorable. But we have judges for a reason, police officers for a reason. And if we can present ourselves in a way that is understandable and not always be looked upon as criminal defendants, and the color of our skin isn't the first thing that's seen, we should be judged by our character. In the courtroom, outside of the courtroom, everyone should be able to know that they have protection of their individual rights and know that you're innocent until proven guilty. But in this case, it's just hard to see that the judge and the jury is against you because everyone is so quick to criticize African Americans by the color of their skin. And that's why everyone feels that they are being victimized, that they are criminals, that the system is broken, that the system is only favorable for certain people. And I sometimes see how one race suffers more than the next race, where there's deception, where even though there are several roles that has to be played, it's still hard to say who's for who. We all know who's who in the courtroom, from the judge to the accused to the lawyers and who they represent, to the jury, the juror's oath, the juror affirmation, the witnesses, the witness oath, the witness affirmation, court officials, the police, the media, and the public. We all know that the judge has control of what's what because he hears cases. He hands down the verdicts and he sits on the bench, and we know that the judge is the person, well, one of the people that we want to hear us. Because as the accused, you're facing prosecution for a crime. And you need a lawyer or someone who will represent you for the judge to hear your case. The jury, everyone wants the jury to be favorable, which is why there's a long process of finding jurors that don't have anything against you, that isn't prejudiced in any way. But witnesses are also important. And if you can find witnesses that can help bring evidence to your case, that is always a benefit, especially in the eyes of the law. And most times, when the evidence is on your side, we can look at the system as not being broken because we've proven facts, we have someone representing us, and even if there are witnesses on the prosecution side, you have to allow the evidence that you had to speak for itself, because the case has to be heard. There's going to be a judge, a jury, police officers, and a lot of people involved. In most cases, if the trial itself isn't high profile, there's no need for media, and media isn't allowed at the courtroom. But the media itself can be beneficial because certain things that you want to be heard, the world can see. But the world itself can form an opinion. We as individuals can form an opinion about the court system and if it's considered broken. But we have to let the criminal justice itself handle the problems that we have. And this is my presentation. It's due September 8th, 2015, and thank you.